Hello, everyone. It's Charlene Lee coming live to you from Palm Desert. I'm actually traveling this week, attending a conference called Summit. And one of the things I wanted to do today, first of all, is welcome you and I encourage you to share what you are doing about strategic planning. It's that time of year where everyone is going through and saying, so what are we going to do for next year, for 2023, especially if you're on an annual calendar planning process. And so one of the things I wanted to talk today was how you approach that. So I would love for you to share how you actually go about strategic planning. Do you get everyone together? Is it just one person who puts it together and then ask everyone else to take a look at it, chime into it? And then how do you put your budget together? So it just at the very highest level, what do you include in that process? How far in the future do you look? And one of the things I have noticed, especially this time of year, people are heads down putting together the budget for 2023. And I want to make sure that we understand putting together a budget is not the same as putting together a strategic plan. And yet, when we put together this sort of operational plan, the way we do it really has a lot of problems with it. It basically lays out what you're going to be doing for the next 12 months and is focused primarily on how much you're going to spend. And then you're stuck with this plan. You can't change any of it. So you have to put on your best crystal ball reading abilities to be able to figure out what that plan is actually going to look like, all the contingencies, all the changes. And given all the changes that are happening in our environment, that's really hard to do. And so it's really hard to take that into account. You also have this problem that you can't ask for so much budget that if you don't end up using it, you'll lose it and people will discount your planning for next year. And then also you always ask for a little bit more because you know everyone's going to get a discount from that, a haircut from what they're asking for. And the biggest problem with this planning process, I believe, is that you're going from as you go past quarter in planning, you run into less and less runway. So by the end of the first quarter, March, you have 9 months left. End of June, just 6 months left. And then the last part of it is, at the very end, like where we are today, we only have 2 months left in our plan. On so many levels, this is not good planning because we are finding that as you're putting these things together, as I said, there are so many things that are inflexible, you're stuck with it. And the reality is you need to have a plan, especially in a large organization that will carry you through more than just the next 12 months, especially if those 12 months start shrinking towards the end. So what I like to approach, let's see, we have a couple comments in here for people. For Jay, for example, he says, I don't go beyond more than 18 to 24 months. Dan says, I just use a wall planner. I have 6 months going out and know exactly what I'm going to put out there and just use that to plan things out. So there are different ways, very simple and complex, put things on the wall, especially if you're an individual or a small company. But if you're a large organization, then that plan, that budget becomes this document that everybody lives by. It's highly transparent. At the end of every month, you see where everyone is. At the end of every quarter, there's a reckoning. Are we on plan? Do we meet budget or not? And that difference between actual and budget is oftentimes a really big determinant of people's compensation and their bonuses. So what I like to do is actually propose a very different approach. And that is to do what I call a 6-quarter walk. So I'll expand this a little bit more so you can see it. The idea is that you go out 18 months. So from today, 18 months out. It's a 6-quarter plan. And the reason why this is so important is that it's just at the very edge, as Jay was talking about, of what you can think about. So 12 months, you can sort of think about it decently, but 18 months really makes you start thinking a little bit further, but it's not so far away that you can't keep thinking about the details of what 18 months could look like. So if you know where you want to be, again, long-term strategy-wise, you've done your strategic planning, this is where we want to be 3, 5, 10 years down the line. We have a shorter term, 18-month horizon to plan against, to execute against. So the very first step for doing the 6-quarter walk is to have an 18-month time horizon. The second one is that your details in Q6 in the last quarter is as detailed as your first quarter. So we can usually plan out for the next quarter. Okay, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to execute on. What I would really challenge you on is to do that for every single quarter going out 18 months. Now, okay, you may not have all the execution details, well, we're going to do this next week, whatever, but that high level quarterly goal in Q6 should be as high as detailed as in Q1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I saw a plan for an organization, and we have been working with some organizations too about how do you actually build that kind of high level. And usually what it looks like, it's really detailed Q1, and then less detailed Q2, and completely peters out 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 going on. So this is the challenge. Make your sixth quarter as detailed as your first quarter. So that's the second thing. First thing, plan out for 6 quarters. Second thing, make them as detailed as possible consistently through all of those 6 quarters. And then here's the really interesting part. At the end of your first quarter, you go through a process to extend your plan another quarter, another 18 months, and you're updating that entire plan based on where you ended up at the end of Q1. Now, this sounds like a lot of work, but it actually doesn't have to be, because you already have the detailed plans. You know what the interdependencies are, and you know where you should have ended up in Q1. So now what you're doing is just adjusting for the things that are a new reality, a new baseline of where you are at the end of that very first quarter. You now know some things worked, some things didn't work. You also know that some money got spent, other things didn't get spent. So you can adjust your entire plan and your budget. So how many times have you ever said, especially if you're working for a large organization, wow, this great new opportunity came along that we didn't know about, but we don't have any budget to go pursue it. How can we steal from something else versus say, well, that's a great opportunity. These other things are still really valid. Let's go and take these monies, this cash that we had, to go and be able to go pursue that. And we'll decide together as a whole, we're not going to do these other things. But it's a unified decision that everyone understands. And this goes back to, so that's the third thing. Again, planning out 6 quarters, making sure that plan is as detailed as possible. Third thing, making sure that you're extending it every single quarter, another 18 months. So it's a rolling 18-month plan. And the last part, very important, is that everyone understands and sees this plan. So everyone in the organization, not just the top executives, not just the top leadership, but everyone in the organization sees what the plan is. So they know, everyone knows what we're working towards. Again, we have a high vision and goal, but we also have this detailed 18-month plan, so we know how we're going to go on this walk together. So that creates so much transparency, and then also accountability. And it's really important because that transparency says we all have to end up at this point together. And if one person we can see in halfway through the quarter, the beginning of the quarter, is starting to fall behind, if a department's having an issue with an initiative, everyone can see it. And then everyone's going to help them, support them to try to make it to the end. And we also can see if that's not working, how that could potentially impact everything else going on for the next 6 quarters. And so therefore, we are already starting to make and adjust plans early on. This creates so much agility, but agility requires that transparency for us to be able to know what's going on, to be able to react to it. So to put this out there as a high-level issue of how to do this strategic planning. And I've been working in my organizations, been working with some organizations now with this over the past year or so, and working very detailed right now with one leadership team in particular to go through and say, how do we put that 6-quarter plan together? How do we change our strategic planning process to be able to do this? So before I go into how you actually go do this, I want to talk a little bit about the pros and cons of the 6-quarter plan. The first thing is that it keeps everyone aligned on task and knowing what we're doing and where we're heading. There's no questions like, why are we doing this? If you don't know why we're doing this, you have the rights to say, how does this fit into a 6-quarter plan? If someone has a new idea, they want to say, let's pursue this. Okay, great. How does that fit into a 6-quarter plan? How does that fit into our strategic planning process? But more importantly, what are we going to stop doing so we can start doing this new opportunity? And it just really aligns everyone against what we're trying to achieve. The second thing, again, it highlights areas where things need help. And the third thing is it keeps what I call jackrabbits in check. Every organization has these people. They go, well, I know we're doing this right now, but there's this great opportunity. I know we want to do it. It's in the future. Let's do that now. And you can point to those people. Yes, you're absolutely right. We should be doing that. And we're going to do that in Q3 or Q5 or even just in the next quarter. But we won't be ready to do that until we do these things today. And there's a reason why it's there and not here today, because we just won't be able to support it. So it gives people an idea of what is happening and also keeps everyone focused on the task at hand, on the job you done. And again, that agility is really important. Now, the disadvantage of this is that it takes time to set up at the very beginning. But if you're going through the strategic planning process now, and you're already planning out 12 months, this requires that you plan out 6 more months. So that's one way to think about it. And so the other part about it is that oftentimes our detailed plans may not be as detailed as we think they are. So that detail needs to be there all the way out and to understand. The hardest part is that everyone has to agree. Everyone has to agree that we're on the same team, that we're buying into this walk, that we're going on this walk together. And if anybody should fall behind, we're all going to have to stop and make sure they catch up, because we can't leave anyone behind on the trail. We can't leave anyone behind on the walk. And at the end of each quarter, it's a time for us to just stop, check in. You know what this is like when you go on a hike. You stop and make sure everyone catch up. Are we all here? Okay, great. Now let's keep going. So how do you get started with this? The first thing is to extend your plan out those 18 months. Lay out as much detail as you can. What do you want to achieve 18 months from now? Have that vision really clearly in place. How does that feed into your overall strategic vision? Have a picture, literally a picture of what it's going to look like 18 months from now. These are the capabilities we want to have. These are the opportunities we're pursuing in the marketplace. This is the type of team we're going to have. Really lay it out in glorious detail. 18 months from now, where do we want to be? And then from there, go back and say, okay, what are the interdependencies that we have between our departments that are critical for making this a success? What are the critical things we have to take and make happen in order for this vision to come true? And then start thinking about laying out all those details over those next 18 months. Again, putting that plan in place. Then it's setting up the process every quarter to update that plan. At the beginning of a cycle, typically about halfway through the cycle, so 6 months into the quarter, you'll start asking people a couple set of questions. What's coming true? What we expected? How much are we on track? Why are we on track? What's not coming true? Our expectations were we're going to be here in 12 months and 12 weeks. And we are, and why is that? What's changed in our environment? How has the competition changed? How have our customers changed? Are there new opportunities that we need to be aware of? And then roll all of this up from every single quarter. You're rolling it up from the very edges of your organization. And this is the key. Your organization is becoming very smart, constantly looking out, extending its tentacles and its radar. Everyone's listening, saying, what's changed? What's going on? Because again, everyone knows what the 6-quarter walk is, and everyone can contribute to say, I see this happening, this changing. And you're filtering that up. And so by the time, about 2 weeks before the quarter ends, you actually have extended another month, another quarter, another 3 months. You know what the plan is. You've made all the adjustments. So at the end of the last 2 weeks, you're just executing like crazy to keep going. So that's a typical way the 6-quarter walk gets executed. I'm just giving it at a very, very high level. And one of the things that I think is so important is that when we're thinking about all of these different aspects of the 6-quarter walk, that it is a living, breathing document. And when we work with organizations to lay this out, it feels like it's a huge burden, something you have to go through every single quarter to do this big strategic planning again. And it's actually a lot easier because you're just asking what's changed, what isn't. You're updating just one more quarter of what the future looks like, updating that picture of what that 18-month looks like. What's changed? What's new? What's different? How is that going to now be even better, clearer of where we're trying to get to? And then we're updating just a few things, hopefully, that we have, or there's a big seismic event that actually happened and everything has to go out the window. So let's take, for example, big events and small events, big events like COVID happening. What happened to our budgets in 2020? We just threw them out the window. But with an 18-month plan, you could say, actually, these are the things that changed. Our people are working from home now. These things are changing. We have to move these budgets around. Our 18-month plan is still intact here, but now we have to make these adjustments because of this big, huge seismic event. But we're now making adjustments through this. We don't have to throw out everything because we have a planning process that is already agile enough to be able to take into account all of these different changes. You can also take into account smaller changes. Take a look at 2022 with rising costs and inflation happening. How are we going to make changes in our budgets, et cetera, going forward? And so you're not just stuck trying to adjust your existing 12-month plan for the last 6 months of that cycle. You're actually putting in place a strategic plan, execution plan, to be able to extend it out all the way out to another 18 months. So you can see the benefits of this. It can save you a lot of grief if you're going through and consistently updating your strategy, execution, operation, and budget planning on a regular basis. So that's what I really have for today. It's a quick idea, but it's a really earth-shattering idea if you think about looking at a 6-quarter walk and all of its implications, that you're looking at an 18-month horizon. It is detailed all the way out to that 18th month. That it is a rolling 18-month horizon, so you're updating it every quarter. And the most important thing, that everyone in the organization is aligned around this plan. This is what I think is the power of the 6-quarter walk. So what I would encourage you to do is to think about how you can go on that 6-quarter walk and make it something that is a part of your strategic planning process right now as you're going through and planning for 2022, and then also into the future. All right, so just a couple of things. I have next week, I'm going to be taking the week off because it's Thanksgiving. I just don't want to distract everyone from all of the travels and plans and connecting with the family. And so this week, on Thursday, I'm going to be doing a special live stream with author and friend, Dr. Sharon Melnick. She has a beautiful book coming out tomorrow called In Your Power. And she is a power specialist, is the way I think about it. How do you think about power? How do you use it? How do you stand in your own power? And I can share with you, I've learned so much from her, and I'm really excited to share with you some of her thinking and writings, especially some of the content from her new book. So join me on Thursday at 10 o'clock Pacific time, 1 o'clock Eastern time. So until then, I wish you all the best thinking about your strategic plan. I would love to hear from you. I so appreciate hearing from you and talking to you each week about what works, what doesn't work. But in this one in particular, I would love to hear what is working for you in terms of strategic planning. Have you tried doing something similar to this? What's worked, what hasn't worked? Because it adds so much to my research. So until Thursday, I will see you here. And then I also will see you after the holidays when we'll talk about giving. All right, thank you and have a great few days. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.